So coming to the point which you have said, taking to that of the UN, and that was a strife. I agree that see, when it's a cabinet decision, it's a everybody is party to it. Now coming back to the war front, which actually happened in fact in 1948 to be precise, October 1948, and at the last moment when the treaty was signed of accession, Indian troops rushed and under the commandership of Brigadier P. Sen during that time, 161 Brigade, in fact it landed up in Srinagar. And in fact it was, though a lot of hardships were there because the Banihal Pass, where it gets closed during the winter, and that was the only accessible road from their side. And so in fact logistics was one of the issue. And Indian armed forces, with their valiant efforts they did. And it is also being said that the advancing army was actually about to almost capture Domen and Skardu, and during that time this particular aspect which you said mentioned it earlier, that since the armed forces had their superior officers right from the British corps, so in fact they had that particular control. So do you think that the Indian Prime Minister, since it has already acceded, I mean the Jammu and Kashmir now being an integral part of India, then government of India from Nehru's side would have given much more push to that of advancing more towards east-west rather than north-south divide?
You see, one thing is sure, that the first priority of the Indian leadership, and largely at the behest of Sheikh Abdullah, was to save the valley. So all the effort went towards saving the valley. Mm-hmm. So all these things about the bravado, etc., of the National Conference volunteers really never got tested, so to speak, because they came in, the tribesmen, and then they were pushed back till Uri. Mm-hmm. But the major portion of southwest part of Kashmir, which was Mirpur, which was the Punch Jagir, Rajouri, Kotli, Jhangar, and all these places. There, the Kashmir Maharaja and the Kashmir Prime Minister, Meher Chand Mahajan, and everyone, they kept on asking for reinforcements, which never came. And even if it came, it became so belatedly that it really only managed to salvage something, perhaps to save those people who had all congregated together in Punch town with the siege of Punch, which lasted for quite some time. But in the process, we lost major portions of southwest Kashmir. And the documents which I've come across recently and read are actually quite disappointing. They give you an impression that we really never thereafter, having lost those territories, never thereafter even thought in terms of regaining them. Number one, because perhaps when you ask people, you discuss, and then the answer usually given is that we didn't want to take it because Sheikh Abdullah's influence did not extend in those areas. So there was no point taking over those areas where the people were not with you. And also secondly, that there were no plans ever made by the Indian leadership to even suo moto go ahead and reclaim those areas back for the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So that is a solid
misgiving, you mean to say?
No, how should I say? This was an act of grave omission.
Grave omission. Yes, that's what. In fact, I also think in that way, that in an advancing army, and in fact, you were right. Then, in fact, we lost some of the major very strategic points which you mentioned just now on the southwestern front of Kashmir. And we would have,
Look, the argument, the counter argument given is that those areas were bordering Pakistan. Pakistan had actually withdrawn all its regular troops from Northwest Frontier Province. They actually did. They just withdrew all their troops and sort of placed them all along the Pakistani border. So it would be very difficult for us. War is always a difficult proposition.
I understand.
But if someone is just sort of taking over your territory, just because you think that the people over there don't want or are rebelling, but the territory is yours, well, you take the territory and bring those restive population back to your own scheme of things.
Absolutely, sir. I'll come back to this point, even which actually happened during the 1965 war. Now, over here, in fact, I would like to ask that if we look into the territorial map of Jammu and Kashmir, right? And one fact, in fact, that the Britishers, you actually were rightly pointed out, they were in fact in favor of the Anglo-American force. In fact, they were in favor of Pakistan, and that was one of the reasons you believe that in fact in Gilgit Corps, right? In fact, they raised the Pakistani flag much before that of the manipulations which actually Jinnah did. Do you think that was one of the manipulations they did, wherein actually Gilgit Baltistan was being put into the...
it's more than clear. In fact, that is one thing which every Indian youngster should know. The role played by the British. In fact, these two captains who were actually, one of them was promoted to Major Brown.
Mm-hmm.
They were not capable of, taking over 1/3 of the territory of Jammu and Kashmir, which was Gilgit Baltistan. It was the British doing. You see, their bosses actually had chosen them to be sent there, and then they were briefing them constantly, and they were being briefed from Peshawar, and Colonel Bacon, who was actually the political agent here in Jammu and Kashmir and was previously in Gilgit Baltistan, he was sort of managing the whole show, and on top of him was sitting George Cunningham, who was the governor of the Northwest Frontier Province, and he was sort of reporting to number one, another king, and another of the king's faithfuls, Francis Muddy. So all these fellows were birds of the same feather, including Mountbatten.
That's what
Mountbatten knew.
So much of connivance, in fact, I find, in fact...
They were British first and British last.
Absolutely. In fact, so much of connivance, in fact, in favoring Pakistan. Now, another thing is that, that might be, one of the reasons that, Jinnah wanted to take Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, because the major army installations which we found, in fact, in the recent Operation Sindoor, it would have been vulnerable, in fact, if Jammu Kashmir would have been parted. Because, Rawalpindi, then in fact you have this Sargoda, then you have this Chaknala, and also the part of the Punjab territory. And in fact, 100%. That would have been much more accessible by roads to that of the Jammu.
100%. We could have actually had direct access to Afghanistan.
Absolutely.
Via Wakhan.
That is, you said it very correct that, we actually omitted one of the major...
Chitral is ours.
Absolutely.
Chitral was part of Jammu and Kashmir. We don't even claim it.
Even one of
I think our Indian map, forget the British, our current Indian map is also flawed.
Right, sir. This is one of the major points which has come up.
Our current Indian map is flawed. It should include Chitral.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it should. And one of the commanders from that particular region was part of the Indian National Army. In fact, Burani, in fact, he was there with Netaji. Anyway, that's a different chapter. Now, in fact, in one of the major issue, in fact, I believe that in fact in the 1965 war, which was, I was saying, that in fact India conceded Hajipir Pass, right? Do you think even Lal Bahadur Shastri to its last, in fact, though Lal Bahadur Shastri's death is being in fact a big question mark and a lot of conspiracies or theories are being put forward. As per the Hajipir Pass conceding was one of the another particularly strategic omission which actually we did
You know, you see, we need to actually study the Indian psyche. The Indian psyche, and therefore also of our leadership, is not based completely on real politics. There is a huge element of idealism
That's
mixed
right.
with it,
That's
right?
right.
I mean, over 90,000 soldiers in East Pakistan,
Mm.
Pakistan soldiers being made prisoners of war. What did we get in return? We got nothing in return.
Absolutely. In fact,
We got nothing in return. So, all our strategic advantages, number one, we don't try and gain them. Number two, wherever we get them, we lose them,
that's right.
right? So, well, it's just a question of now over a period of time as our officialdom, as our defense establishment gets more and more experienced, and also with the increasing realization now
Now,
that you are on your own.
absolutely.
You're not part of any bloc. You
Absolutely.
are on your own.
And India doesn't have any friend. In
Yeah,
fact,
so we Indians are on our own. And so it's only our strength
Absolutely.
that matters. So that feeling will itself instill in us a sense of perhaps self-sufficiency.
Ahambodh, what actually we can call it from that of the
And
suggestion.
Swavalamban.
Swavalamban.
And that I think will do us an awful lot of good.
That's a very good point, sir. In fact, one of the major takeout, in fact, I should say, in fact, about the confabulations and that of the parlays which we are having, part of this particular discussion. Major takeout is that, Savalamban both, what actually you said.
Yes, I mean, to know that there's no one coming to your help.
Absolutely.
You are on your own. So and now, I mean, I'd go a step further. What was Operation Sindoor? Operation Sindoor made it very clear to us that Pakistan was a proxy
Absolutely.
for our northern neighbors, for China.
Absolutely.
So we were actually trying to test our waters.
Sir, hearing this point, in fact, I would also like to ask, that is that now, in fact, in India, we have a 3.5 war, right? And because of China is one, along with that, you have Pakistan. Now, added to it, in fact, is Bangladesh being a hostile territory. Now, we know it. A 0.5 factor is that of the internal deep state enemy, what actually is being there. Now, in fact, what should be the strategy, in fact, in terms of, identifying it and also, taking care of them? The first is that of the political strategy. Second is that of the diplomatic strategy, or in fact, the internal security strategy, you believe?
You see, it is a fact which is undeniable that the intelligence agencies of various countries, which are our neighbors, may, for their own self-interest, infiltrate. So that's what is the
Absolutely.
deep state. So, I mean, outside of the administration, would not be able to comment on what exactly our government does to counter all that. But I'm sure it does, and it does well. But the fact is that this is not going to go. This is not going to go. So it is a continuous effort on our part to become more and more efficient at trying to tackle them. And I think we have a good set which has seen a lot of continuity in terms of our intelligence gathering network, whether they be internal or external, meaning thereby whether the external, Indian External Gathering Agency. So they would definitely be getting better and better with time and with continuity that gets provided, fortunately, by the government at the top level. But what cannot be denied is that there would be pockets of places in our country where they would find
Absolutely.
Very congenial ground to stay unnoticed or to grow
Even
their roots.
absolutely motivate the disgruntled lot, in fact, in the country.
So that is something which is worrying.
And in fact, though I am going to park it, in fact, for some other session, that is, recently the West Bengal is being found as a pot boiling situation. There's a number of counterfeit Aadhaar card are being made. Even person becoming in charge of panchayat being a citizen from that of a different country.
Yes, it's the porous borders
Yes.
and the high density of population, and of course poverty and smuggling, which takes place. All these things add to the problem of our eastern borders, also western,
Absolutely.
and narcotics. The smuggling of narcotics. So all that is serious. They're serious issues.